You say that there hasn't been within Germany on the talk show circuit enough interest in the provenance and responsibility and questions, like hard questions, of why Germany really has taken the stance that it has, what it means to be, and if it's possible to be an immigration society. And I'm wondering if you could say anything about the contemporary political activism of refugees, like at Oplatz or with Du Bois or Caravane, and if that's, in your opinion, sort of having a forceful presence in discourse right now, and if so, why not? If that's the place we need to go to really continue these conversations?
Well, first of all, about the German refugees from the East, that they had political organizations is per se would say this is positive. What was really difficult about it was, of course, that they had a very revisionist view on German history themselves. So they were basically the very far right-wing section of the German society. So this is what makes it all the more complex. And that is probably also why I forgot totally that she was at all in this text writing about the German refugees and not about the Jewish or Palestinian or whatever around 1950, which would have been more what I actually had in my memory. That was the main refugee questions for her. For the second part of your question, I think you started giving us this list that there were 3 options: camp, assimilations, camps, and the conscious pariah. I think, well, some decades have passed in the meantime, and maybe this is just a catchword, but something like diversity management would be maybe the 4th on the list. I mean, just acknowledging that you don't, neither do you have to set up camps, nor do you have to force anybody to assimilate into the mainstream, or do you have to force people to be pariahs. What we have to do basically is acknowledge that there is no ethnic homogeneity in modern societies, and that it's not on the part of the refugees to just assimilate or adopt to whatever situation, but the real task is for the entire society to arrange some sort of management of diversity. That's what I think.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because it gives me an opportunity. First of all, to slightly disagree with Roger a little bit. I don't quite agree with what he had to say about the pariah and the significance, but then I wanted to come to the subject of integration that came up in the first panel, of course, also. You know, Roger, I think the pariah and the political organization for Arendt was primarily a Jewish issue. Assimilation had never led to anything. The Jews were not saved through the 19th century assimilation they engaged in, for instance, in Germany. And so her argument against assimilation and her argument for the forceful pariah is to a large extent, I think, an argument about what Jews should be doing in the post-war situation. And not that easily, I tend to agree with Annette, it's not that easily generalized to other situations, but that would be, you defend yourself immediately. But let me perhaps say one more word about integration. And I had, during the break, I had an exchange with Ola about this. Integration, first of all, we should understand that integration is really a term that has to be mostly understood in light of its opposite, segregation. And so whenever somebody says integration, whether that is in Germany nowadays or whether that is on the race issues in the United States, what they are also saying is we don't want segregation. And of course, with respect to the refugees, this is particularly vivid in Europe because the French solution, the segregated solution, the banlieue, is something that nobody wants and people are consciously rejecting. So that is the first part of it, that integration does have a positive concept. And I would like to add, having originally gone to university in Germany, integration was very much a very positive political concept in the immediate post-war period, in universities, for instance, because Weimar was interpreted as having failed in integration completely. Weimar was made up of lots of diverse antagonistic groups. They had never integrated. And so one of the great aims of some of the thinkers in the Federal Republic and some of the very famous professors of constitutional law like Smend in Göttingen was integration, to talk all the time about integrating functions. So the term has in that sense, positive values. Having said that, I quite agree with Annette and Over's earlier emphasis. This is a two-way street. Integration is not something that you can just demand of refugees. Indeed, if I were a German politician, which thank God I'm not, I would not use the term integration. All I would say is, we expect of you who have come here to Germany to abide by our laws, and these are our laws. And by the way, those laws, in order to gain respect, have to be good laws, and that is a two-way street. The refugees have to be heard about what laws are good laws and not good laws. Let's say the issue of the headscarf, or whatever you choose. The differences in culture have to be brought into this issue, and that is obviously a very difficult situation. And I confess, I follow the German media, and I follow the German discussion as I am here, mostly as a guest and as a resident, passing resident. I think that discussion in Germany has not even begun. Integration is just a Schlagwort with which you beat people up. And it shouldn't be. It is a serious kind of idea. To what extent should people go in, not assimilating, but in living here, and what do they have to accept?
Yeah, I don't want to get too technical and worried, but I do want to say that I, like Annette, very much worry about the Arendt industry around the world, both in Germany and the United States. Don't go to a whole lot of Arendt conferences precisely because of my impatience with it. One of the things I love about Arendt, like Annette again, is how provocative and difficult she is, and how she says things that a lot of us disagree with. So one thing that I just want to come back to is, I don't think there's a Sonderweg for her with the Jews around questions of integration. Arendt writes many essays later in her life, essays that most people hate, arguing for segregation. Not legalized segregation, but for the importance of people living in communities, whether they be blacks in the United States and whites, or Gentiles, or Muslims, or Jews. She believes deeply in what she called plurality. Plurality is one of the key words of her whole thing, and that's that we're all different and unique, and that we should be able to have strong religious, cultural, ethnic, even racial identifications that we feel comfortable in and live amongst. And we don't have to live in a kind of equal, diversity managed society. And she really resisted that. She did so on grounds of difference and plurality, and grounds for respect for refugees and respect for people who wanted to live differently, which she believed in fundamentally. And so I think that to take that part of her work out is dangerous. Politically, she believed 100% in political equality. But socially and in private, she was not so diverse. And I just think it's important for us to remember that.
Well, I have a question for Annette, especially what do you mean by diversity management, and how do you imagine that? When I hear management, I become very nervous. Someone's coming to manage me. I'd rather not. And maybe that's also an opportunity for you to respond to Roger's very provocative statement.
Well, I'm very skeptical about the term myself, especially about the management issue. But maybe I can explain this. I'm at the Center for Scientist-Theologische Forschung in Potsdam, where I work. I happen to be the Equal Opportunities Officer, meaning that I have to make sure that whenever we have job openings, there will be enough women on the list. Now the word is spread that we're going to be, in the future, we're going to be responsible not only for the equal opportunities of women, but also for equal opportunities of ethnic minorities, of handicap, or whatever. I'm very skeptical about this, but if I look at my institute, they're all Germans, straight white male Germans. And this is something, maybe it's hard for somebody who's from the United States to imagine what the institute looks like, but it really does. So what I think is what we have to do is make sure at least that somebody whose last name is Erdogan or whatever will not be will be on the list eventually. So to actively make sure that we have in mind that there are people who are not straight white male scientists. For example, this is just my own personal context, but I think we have to do this at large to make sure that not everybody is straight white male.
Thank you. We'll take these two questions and then I'll give you one last chance to make a comment.
I'd like to pick up on the idea of that Annette mentioned about the idea of Germany opening the border for refugees and rethinking what happened. Because maybe I just want to echo that thought, because I also heard Gerhard speak about Germany assuming the moral high ground again in that moment, and it was in the beginning of 2015, I think, and I was, for me personally, as an exile or as a refugee, as I tried to engage what she was saying, and in hindsight, I could see what was happening. I kind of like want to echo that, but also kind of question the idea of opening the border, because does Germany open the border in terms of the borders that exist now, and the idea that borders are open, that actually refugees are the ones who got onto the boats and used their bodies to cross. What is the alternative to opening the border? Is basically killing them, shooting them, allowing them to drown more. So I kind of want to question that open the border. I think the other point that I want to make is, as I like the conscious barrier thing, but as somebody who's labeled as Muslim, I also been thinking about how there are similarities in the way Germany or Europe has been policing and controlling Muslims in parallels to what it was doing to the Jewish people. And just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, maybe I can just add, because I think Germany didn't open the borders. It wasn't closing it. I mean, there's a big difference in the picture of like opening or closing it. And sort of integration, as Vowinckel said, I mean, welcome refugees, giving them something what we have too much doesn't hurt. But it will hurt if somebody, for instance, has to give half of the income or open up houses. And I'm missing a bit the point that, of course, one should all welcome them, but the people who should give should be in all society levels. And also Hannah Arendt stands for a person who was highly educated. She could fled Germany. She understood what the structure sort of is, as Hans Jonas did in all those people. But, I mean, that's an exception. And it's always a bit hard for a younger generation to hear people saying, of course we should open, we have to because of the Jews. And the person lives in a big house with 10 rooms, but like no refugees are living in their home. So I think there should must much more be done than just a certain
Thank you so much for those interventions. These are really challenging questions that we need to think about. So we don't have too much time left, but I would like to give everyone a chance to respond if they'd like to the points that were raised by the last two speakers.
Well, actually, I totally agree that it's good if people give things and give things on all levels. It's just, I think what I was trying to say is that what I've heard from some people is that they do take, they give their old clothes, for example, to refugee homes, but at the same time, they argue that enough is enough now. And this is, for me, this is a notion of pity. I mean, they give stuff away because they don't need it anymore, it doesn't really hurt. And they show an attitude of pity, but it's not an act of really meeting up somebody face to face, for example. And this is what I wanted to express, that I not particularly like this attitude.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are good questions. Rarely do people give up. They give up stuff they are happy to give up. Most people in the world don't give up stuff that actually they want deeply and feel like they need. Which is why I guess I tried to suggest that the attempt to solve this crisis through pity or human rights or international organizations, I do think is the wrong approach. People don't just give stuff up. I think the way to do it is to demand it. Which is why I think it's a political solution that has to come from the bottom up rather than a humanitarian solution from the top down. I mean, I forget how many years it was now ago when the current civil war started in Syria and the Arab uprisings, the Arab Spring. The human rights community sent, medicine and food to Syria. I thought this was ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to help Syria, send weapons. If you're going to help Syria, help them fight and create the country they want. If you're not going to help Syria, then don't help them. But sending food and medicine simply creates the kind of dependency that leads to the problem. And I think that we in the West have to understand and have to decide whether we're willing to fight for freedom, fight for the ways of life that we believe in, and help people around the world who are trying to fight for it, or not. I mean, I think, again, I'm not sure if she agrees with me on a lot of things, but I agree with a lot of what Annette said. I think the problems of this is that the West has not supported democracy and revolutions around the world for 50 years. We've largely supported dictatorships and tyrannies around the world in the name of security and stability, and not actually stood up for the values that we say we believe in. We've actually stood up for values we actually believe in, which is security and wealth, rather than democracy and political freedom. And that's what I see to be the source of these problems. And if we really want to solve them, we got to start standing up for what we believe in.
I'm sure I don't want to travel down that road, but I want to make one very simple point, coming back to the diversity subject. I had a column in the Tagesspiegel about 10 days ago where I dealt with this. What is needed when you deal with diversity and the issues posed in modern Germany now is patience, patience, patience. Patience on the side of the majority, patience on the side of the minorities and the refugees. These are all issues that normally get solved over 20, 30, 40 years. They do not get solved by the next Parteiprogramm.